Any other questions? Okay. I'll come back to you.
Hi, my question is to any one of you can answer. Somebody spoke about the road transportation having 63% presence. So I would like to understand what is the benchmark and which country does have the best. That's number one. Number two question is more on the managed service part. I have seen the changes in this industry for over the last 14 years, where 14 years before people tried to get into the 3PL kind of solution, and I know have examples where uh, over the period of time the concept failed, and companies had to integrate that supply chain process back into the organization. So in current scenario, when we get into that managed kind of solution, what do we see as a challenge today, and where do we see industry 3 years hence, considering the IoT, considering the new roads and infrastructure building, considering the focus which is on the railway and all. Thank you.
Maybe I can answer part of your question. Uh, 63% or to say around 65% of our transportation happens by road, as mentioned. By and large, if you go by the industry practices, go to Europe, a lot of movement of material is happening through waterways. And I can say the road transportation comes down to a level of 30 to 35% in those areas or in those geographies. Second thing is on the mode of transport where we are lacking, which I personally feel, is the implementation of multimodal transport. Though we have certain operators who are managing rail fleet, and government has recently come out with a public-private partnership program where they are inviting private players to partner with them. But the challenge there, I would say, the implementation of dedicated rail freight corridor is not yet up to the mark. We will bring in more partners from the industry, but the bottleneck would be the network. The preference would be given to the passenger transport rather than to the freight. Until and unless we improve the infrastructure of the rail network within the country, we are not going to increase the rail movement. Secondly, what concerns us in the chemical industry when we move, for us, I would say it's not 63%, 80% of our transportation is by road. And when we move the kind of chemicals on the road, the biggest concern is safety. The drivers needs to be trained. It's a fragmented industry. The truck changes with every shipment, the driver changes with every shipment. So we need to continuously provide the trainings to the driver, and I always say, from the transportation industry point of view, drivers are the bottom of the pyramid. Until and unless we start investing in them, invest in the trainings, and give them the better workplace, I would say, the kind of respect they should get, a lot needs to be done. But going forward, as I mentioned, let's look forward, improvement on the infrastructure. Nitin Gadkari, I believe, is doing a fantastic job. Secondly, we are looking forward for waterways to start within the country, and it's going to ease the pressure on the road transportation, I would say.
So, so India itself had somewhere close to 45% movement by truck just about 20, 25 years ago. And it has significantly changed in last few years. As the volume grew, other modes of transportation have not caught up to the volume. The biggest challenge that I see today is the lack of integrated logistics policy, which combines the various modes of transports, have the connectivity built between. So today, if you look at our ports, look at East Coast or West Coast is much better, but if you look at East Coast ports, there is no connectivity from the port to the nearest rail ramp or the highways. It's very poor. It's built, some of the places, it's built by the individual industries to move their material, but it's just not there. So even if I move it through waterways and cost of that leg is very less, the last mile cost is going to be very, very high. And therefore, there is a huge amount of uncertainty. There are very less number of players that are available who are doing intermodal and multimodal transportation in India because of this. But having said that, I think there is a lot of things that are going to change in next, say, 5 to 7 years, I believe. The target dates are much sooner as per the government Niti Aayog, but I believe it's 5 to 7 years that it will take. Government has invested very heavily in few freight corridors like DMIC, DFC, dedicated for freight corridors on the western route as well as on the eastern side. The concept is higher, wider, faster and longer. So trains are going to be twice the length because of the higher engine power. It's wider, it's higher, so two compartments and higher, wider, longer and faster, and also going to be much faster than what we have today. We have 40 kilometers per hour speed of the goods train, which is going to be somewhere around 100 odd kilometers per hour. So just imagine Delhi to Mumbai cost. The time is going to be one third. That means you are carrying one third inventory in transit, and the cost is going to be 1/5. That's the kind of cost that you compare to the railway, the road transportation. So I think there's going to be a lot of change because of these transport corridors coming up. One very big challenge that we have in India is there are very few routes which are balanced. So if you look at, for example, a lot of movement ship out happened through the western coast, and therefore the balance, if you see, is only like, for example, Delhi, Mumbai, or Hyderabad, Mumbai. These are some of the very balanced routes, but most of the routes are imbalanced. So that means there is a one-way flow, but the other way flow is not there. So if you take, and because of the very high fragmentation of the our transportation players, you have point-to-point players. So if the truck goes to the one side and there is no return load, they have to wait, and the efficiency and the cost is very high. I think there is a need somewhere, till the time there is a large transportation players are active in the market, there is a need of a network logistic concept where, and the spot logistics somebody talked about, and then there is a network logistics concept who can combine multiple, who has the asset visibility, that where the asset is and where the loads are, and make some automated network through advanced optimization technologies. I think that will solve and reduce the cost of transportation significantly, because India today has 40% deadhead. Means 40% empty miles our trucks are running, and that can significantly come down with this, and therefore the cost.
Thank you, Venkatesh. Alok, since you mentioned about driver training and drivers at the bottom of the pyramid, I wanted to share this with you. I think on 1st of November 2014, Nitin Gadkari inaugurated an institute called IDTR, Institute of Driving Training and Research, which is a joint venture with CIRT Bhosri, which is Central Institute of Road Transport, and Tata Motors, which actually gives them the vehicles and the stimulators. I will talk to you offline in detail about it and on how drivers can be trained better for hazardous goods movement. But I thought, let me just share that with you. We have two questions. One here, this gentleman, and then there's one last question.
Good afternoon. My name is John. I represent a company called GI Smart E-Cargos, where we are using technology to build up the logistics space. My question to Mr. Venkatesh Kumar. See, you said that India's logistics spend is about 14% of the GDP, right? And you also said that all of this extra expenditure, which is, you said, equal GDP, other countries were only doing about 9% or 8%. So this extra spend is going on the last mile connectivity. First and foremost, I want to know whether it's on the last mile connectivity that we are spending that 5%. And even if that be the case, where is the possibility that we can eliminate it altogether, whether we are doing inland waterways or rail or any other transport, that's all at the mid-level. So at the last mile, I don't think so there's any way we can actually solve this. So how do you think this problem can actually be solved? And my second question to Mr. Mayur Vamanan is on the GST space. And now that you said GST is going to improve the productivity of the country by about 30 to 35% because of reduced delivery time. One of the things we have found in our research is, would this mean that most of the warehouses in the country will become vacant or will not be utilized because of the centralization process that GST will enable?
So when I talked about 14.5%, it's across the chain, And it's not just the 5% is going to come from just the last mile. It's across the chain that we need to improve. So I think there was in terms of data, I think I just wanted to correct that. Last mile is about 40% of the cost, up to the 40% of the cost of the total cost, of the total 14.5%. In terms of improvement, we have to look at all legs. So it's the first leg, first mile, mid mile, as well as the last mile. We are looking at the all legs of improvement, and then only we can bring it down to somewhere, say, 8 or 9% that we are looking at in the next 5-7 years.
The GST? Yeah, like I mentioned, it's not as if warehouses are going to go empty. Like I mentioned, warehouses would continue to be necessary for your last mile, where your customer clusters are, where your manufacturing clusters are, where your larger markets are, where your consolidation centers are. Now, they are basically supply chain solutions. Therefore, it's not as if you could eliminate them completely, but those having warehouses simply for the need to have an invoicing done, which is probably the current issue that we have, that probably would be completely eliminated. But that said, you'll find most of those invoicing points are generally consolidation points too, because it works both ways, yeah? What GST changes is the fact that you have no more regulatory system at borders, where like earlier in Mulund or in Chembor, vehicles lose anything from 1 hour to 10 hours to whatever hours. You build another industry in terms of tax agents who actually bring cash in there, and drivers are supposed to carry cash and offload them in terms of octroi. And since octroi is big, you actually assign a lot of cash to be carried by the drivers. So to facilitate that, you have companies who set up agents out there who bring large chests of money, and all that thing that actually holds up productivity, that goes away. Now, in state to state on CST, so you have state borders everywhere. There's a documentation checking that take place. That again is physical. I have seen vehicles that actually stood out there for anything from 3 to 6 hours by the time the last guy got checked and he was released from that border. Now, all these issues, then you have all separate states like Form 31, A and B and UP. So every state has certain unique taxation forms. Bihar has circular taxation routes where they're not checked by borders on checkposts, but by jeeps that go round and round. Anybody could catch hold of anyone and stop them out there for an inspection. Now, all that regulatory affair that the government had introduced and the state governments introduced, and then you have corporations introduced, each one bringing their own processes in making sure tax does not escape their net, is now completely taken away. As a matter of, so what takes, say, 3 days down to Guwahati from Cochin would probably, theoretically could probably take even less a number of days. Today, the number of days is 13, yeah? I have an investing company in Athena, which is the company I represent, which is a solutions company. Now, they actually move vehicles out of Cochin down to Guwahati in 3.5 to 4 days. The average India is 14 days. Now, what do we do to get around that as a solution? Yeah, so we built a whole lot of linkages in terms of how this vehicle, with the drivers keep changing en route, we're multiplying the utility of that vehicle much more than what it is done today, yeah? But that's a very, very difficult form of extracting that kind of service norm, but the normal service norm continues to be what it is. So what could be produced one time today could be provided probably 3 times more when your turnaround times start doubling and trebling tomorrow. So GST is basically going to be a great catalyst in turnaround times, essentially. That's what's going to do.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Anil Kale from Volvo Asia Commercial Vehicles. We are into business of manufacturing the commercial vehicles, trucks and buses. My question to Venktesh is, you talked about integrated logistics network and the difficulties that we have today in India. Any specific product innovation that you would expect, especially in the trucks or the containers, that will actually help this particular transportation to be a big success in India? Because what we believe is after the GST, I think the integrated logistics model is going to be the next big game changer for Indian logistics sector.
I I think there are two, three levers that I see. I mean, just coming from VECV. VECV is a very big customer of mine, so I know that very well. Two, three major levers that I see just from the OEM, truck OEM perspective. The first is, as Mr. Nambiar was saying, we need trucks which can run 24 by 7, 20 days continuously. Today, our asset rotation is just 270 kilometers per day compared to, on an average, 700 kilometers per day for a developed country. So, we're talking about almost one third. So if we have to run 3 shifts continuously with multiple drivers, we are talking about very good quality trucks. And I know today trucks which are out there in the market, in the normal range, they would not be able to service 24 by 7 that kind. So we need better trucks, the high-end pro kind of trucks that we are having. That's one. Second is ability to track or some sort of ability to track and provide information to multiple parties. For example, if there is any breakdown, it should provide the information to dealers, it should provide the information to engineering team in terms of the parts failure and then the improvements of parts, and then it should also be able to provide the fleet owners the visibility in terms of where they are. So the inbuilt technology in the truck itself probably is a great lever. It's something that bigger markets already has, and if it is OEM fitted, it can be a big help for many of the people. I think the third, and I see that as a lever that is already coming out in the market, is moving from a product selling to a service selling. So instead of you sell trucks, you said number of miles or uptime or things like that. So I think, and there are a lot of, like how you do to the industrial customers, like in mines you have the site, at the site you have the maintenance facility and things like that to take care of the uptime. I think for the commercial vehicles also, the uptime will be very critical in terms of uptime and providing the complete service. Somebody gave a Philips example, the same thing I think is going to be a reality in very near future. I already know a very large transportation company, the state transportation company is trying to work out with one of the large OEMs in providing the buses as a uptime, completely maintained buses, and number of ways they will be charging based on the number of hours, just the OPEX model. So I think these are the three things that comes to my mind.
Thank you, Venkatesh. One last question from the lady, and then I will hand over the mic to our friend Mayur.
Hi everyone. Good afternoon. This is Tanya here. I'm the co-founder of StoreSpace. We provide flexible warehousing solutions. So my question is to Mr. Alok Gautam and Mr. Soman Nambiar. I would like to understand what is the biggest challenge as far as warehousing is concerned in the chemical industry and how that compares with other industries, especially with the GST coming in picture now. Thank you.
First is, as I mentioned, the compliances of the warehouse, which we have seen in the last so many years is not a standard practice. Warehouse management systems, we need the lean inventory in the entire value chain, and warehouse data visibility plays a major role. Training of the warehouse service providers and the kind of infrastructure they are setting. Everyone wants a plug and play kind of a warehouse now, which is ready with the racking systems, the approvals in place, and the trained staff. Handling of the MHEs in a very safe and compliant manner, picking, sorting, material, loading, and the approval of the checklist of the trucks which comes in for loading of material, and continuously an engagement between the warehouse service provider and the transportation service provider, so the adequate knowledge of the chemicals which are handled from the data sheet point of view can be passed on, so that once the driver leaves with the material on the truck, he is aware of what chemical he is handling and what he needs to do in the case if there is an emergency. So build the kind of an emergency response system. So all these are the things which we as a chemical industry user would like to see the service providers are bringing and offering us And this is not something which we are only looking. We, from the emergency response point of view, just let me share that we have a platform called as Nicer Globe, which is started by the 7